The Lord of the Rings, the greatest tale in the history of fiction. Today, we're going to go ahead and look at the entire timeline, the history of all of the major and a lot of the minor parts of that story. Hopefully, this will help any of you out there in understanding and furthering your journey in Tolkien's Middle-earth. My Govanen, Joysten here, and today I'm excited to jump into this timeline. Related articles, sources, artists, and other videos will be in the description and cards, so please check those out. But also, big shout out to the Tale of Years in the appendices, where I got most of this information, and filled that in with a lot of other lore from other places in Tolkien's Legendarium. Now, to make sense of this, we will mostly first have to categorize this by year, then month and year, then day, month, and year, because of how the major events in Lord of the Rings really speed up in that way. From Bilbo's party to the ring-bearer leaving the Grey Havens, let's go through it. Just as the tale itself does, we start on September 22nd, 3001 of the Third Age. This is Bilbo's birthday party, where he disappears from the Shire and leaves his ring for Frodo. At this time, Gandalf gets far more suspicious of the ring, as he had been growing in that suspicion for many years, wondering if it was something greater. Gandalf then sought the aid of Aragorn and his rangers in searching for the creature Gollum. 3002 of the Third Age. Bilbo would settle in Rivendell in the House of Elrond after a small adventure. From 3004 to 3008 of the Third Age, Gandalf began regular trips to the Shire to keep an eye on Frodo and ensure that the ring was staying safe and hidden. The wizard would then cease his frequent visits, electing to spend more time attempting to find Gollum. 3009 of the Third Age. The lands would become dangerous throughout Middle-earth, and Lord Elrond would send for Arwen to return home from Lothlorien. She would continue to stay in Rivendell for the rest of the Lord of the Rings, at least until her wedding. Gandalf and Aragorn continue to seek for Gollum, but the creature himself goes into Mordor and is captured by Sauron. During his torture over the next 8 years, Sauron would learn of the Shire and Baggins before letting Gollum go. 3017 of the Third Age. Gandalf would eventually turn away from the task, going to Minas Tirith instead and finding the Scroll of Isildur in its library. Aragorn, however, finds Gollum in the Dead Marshes right as he contemplated giving up the task himself. He would go through Lorien and to Mirkwood with the creature, and sometime afterwards, Gandalf would visit to question Gollum, learning more about his version of the tale. It was at about this time that Gandalf nearly fully realized Bilbo's ring was in fact the one, but he needed one more test to prove it. Now as we go into 3018 of the Third Age, our tale grows and speeds up, so we will now transition into months. April 3018 of the Third Age. Gandalf returns to the Shire after a long absence, and speaks with Frodo about the Shadow of the Past. While Sam listens in, they discuss the ring, Gollum, and much else that Gandalf had learned. After the wizard threw the ring into the fire, and the ring was discovered to be Sauron's One Ring, they decide that the One Ring must leave the Shire. June 3018 of the Third Age. Sauron launches his attack on Faramir and Boromir's people at Osgiliath to allow for the passing of the Nazgul, that they might search the Anduin, cross the Isen, and search for the Shire, Baggins, and the One Ring. Orcs also attack the Elves of Mirkwood, allowing for Gollum to escape custody. Towards the end of the month, at mid-year, Radagast also finds Gandalf and tells him that Saruman was seeking him. Gandalf began his journey. July 3018, Gandalf would be captured by Saruman at Isengard, and Boromir would begin his journey to Imladris, leaving Rivendell to pursue the meaning of his prophetic dream. August 3018. Gollum disappears entirely, going into Moria and not being able to get out of the West Gate. He remains there. As we get into September, we will now look both at the month generally as well as a few specific dates, but not exactly every single one as to not get too bogged down in the deep lore. September 3018 of the Third Age. On the 18th, Gandalf would escape Orthanc atop Gwaihir, seeking aid from the Rohirrim at Edoras. In the coming days, he would tame Shadowfax, ride hard to the north, even after the Nazgul who crossed the Isen. The Black Riders would break the Rangers' defense at Sarn Ford on the 22nd, entering the Shire that day. On the 23rd, Frodo would leave Bag End, beginning his adventure. Only 3 days later, he would enter the Old Forest, meet Tom Bombadil, staying only 2 days with him. On the 28th, Frodo would be captured by a Barrow-wight, only 5 days after leaving Bag End, and Gandalf would reach Sarn Ford. The next day, Frodo and the other hobbits would reach Bree and meet Strider, and Gandalf would talk to Sam's dad, Gaffer. On the 30th, Crick Hollow, Frodo's home in Buckland, and the Prancing Pony as well are both raided by the Nazgul in the early hours of the morning. Frodo would escape Bree, and Gandalf would reach Fredegar Bolger in Crick Hollow later that day, who was still terrified. October 3018 of the Third Age. On the 1st, Gandalf actually reached Bree and spoke to Barlaman, who had let Strider lead the hobbits away. Gandalf was pleased with this, and then rode away swiftly upon Shadowfax, going past Aragorn, Frodo, and the others incidentally, and on the 3rd, Gandalf had a confrontation with the Nazgul at Weathertop. After this, Gandalf rode up the Horwell River towards Rivendell. On the 6th, Frodo would be wounded by the Morgul blade at their Weathertop camp, and the company would make haste towards Rivendell. Glorfindel would leave Rivendell, and eventually fend off the Nazgul on the last bridge only 2 days before Frodo crossed that same bridge. In the coming days, Glorfindel would find them and help them move towards Rivendell. Gandalf reached Rivendell on the 18th, hoping Frodo would soon do the same. And indeed, the Ringbearer would escape over the Bruinen 2 days later, recovering through October 24th. That very night, Boromir arrived, and the Council of Elrond, gathering through many strange convening quests and companies all in Rivendell at the same time, convened on the 25th. That day and the next, the Fellowship of the Ring would be formed. December 25th, 3018 of the Third Age. On the 25th, the Fellowship of the Ring departed Rivendell, going on their quest. January 3019 of the Third Age. On the 8th, the company finally reached Aregin, or Hollin, the old land of the elf smiths. 3 to 4 days later, the company would attempt the pass of Carathras, but be forced back by the bitterness of the mountain. Then they would face wolves in the early hours of the 13th, and reach the west gate of Moria and encounter the Watcher in the Water later that night. Gollum began following them. The next night, on the 14th, they came to the 21st Hall. The next day, January 15th, they would escape the Balrog all the way to the bridge of Khazad-dûm, where Gandalf would turn to face him. After their fall, the Fellowship made haste towards Lothlorien, reaching the Nimrodel River later that night, meeting Haldir soon after. The company would be led through the Golden Wood to Caras Galadhon for the next 2 days. All the while, Gandalf and the Balrog fought, and from the 23rd to the 25th, Gandalf and Durin's Bane fought back up to the peak of Zirak Zigil above Moria. On the 25th, after 10 days of fighting from the 15th through the 25th, Gandalf slew the Balrog, and he himself fell upon the mountain. February 3019 of the Third Age. For around 2 weeks, the Fellowship stays in Lothlorien, and Frodo peers into the mirror on the 15th. During that day, Gandalf is also brought back to life, staying in a trance. The next day, the Fellowship leaves Lothlorien and is hunted by Gollum. On the 17th, Gwaihir bears Gandalf back to Lorien after finding him. 6 days later, the boats of the Fellowship would be attacked by orcs at Sarn Geber on the River Anduin as they continued to go towards the Argonath. During the 25th, the Fellowship reached the Argonath and Parth Galen setting up camp. At the same time, across the countryside of Rohan, the first battle of the Fords of Isen would be fought, and Prince Theodred would be slain. The next day, Boromir would attempt to get the ring, Frodo and Sam would leave, the Uruks would attack, and the Fellowship would break on the 26th, leading to the 3 hunters pursuing Merry and Pippin and their captors across the plains. On the 27th and 28th, Éomer set off to slay the band of Uruks and then does so. On the 29th, the escapee hobbits, Merry and Pippin, meet Treebeard and Gandalf the White, who arrived in the days before. On that same day, Frodo and Sam meet Gollum and Emenmuil, and Faramir sees the funeral boat of Boromir pass by him on the Anduin. Finally, strangely enough, there are 30 days in February, at least this year, in Middle-earth. On the 30th, the 3 hunters meet Éomer, and the Entmoot in the Fangorn begins. March 3019 of the Third Age. Alright, this month we'll have the most amount of events of any, because from here, March 1st, through the 25th, all of the events from where we are now through to the destruction of the ring occur. To make this a bit more comprehensible, I will actually take it in 5-day chunks and do quick summaries of those 5 days. March 1st through the 5th. Frodo goes through the Dead Marshes and ends up at the Black Gate. Theoden rises and rallies Rohan against Isengard, being pushed back and fighting the Battle of Helm's Deep. Faramir goes forth from Minas Tirith to Ithilien and Ents destroy Isengard. On the 5th, the victors of Helm's Deep speak to Saruman. Pippin looks into the Palantir and rides to Minas Tirith with Gandalf. March 6th through the 10th. Frodo goes south into Ithilien and is captured by Faramir's rangers. By the 10th, Frodo is released and goes to the Morgul Vale, reaching the crossroads and seeing the Morgul host departing Minas Morgul. Aragorn, during this time, is reinforced by the Grey Company Rangers, goes to Dunharrow, takes the Paths of the Dead, and begins to cross through southwestern Gondor. Again, all within 5 days. Pippin and Gandalf leave Rohan and get to Minas Tirith during this time. An army from Mordor invades Ithilien and Osgiliath, driving Faramir back to Minas Tirith. Gandalf saves Faramir. Finally, the Rohirrim muster as they begin to set out for Minas Tirith. March 11th through the 15th. Gollum leads Frodo up the stairs of Cirith Ungol, entrapping him in Shelob's lair. Sam defeats Shelob and drives Gollum off. Sam takes the ring believing Frodo is dead, but learning that he lived, he fought up the Tower of Cirith Ungol to get him back. Sam would then rescue Frodo, and they would venture down into Mordor together. During this time, the Siege of Gondor, movement of the Rohirrim through the Druidine Forest, the Battle of the Pelennor Fields, the Battle of Pelargir, the sailing of the Corsair ships up the Anduin, and all the rest happens. Also, Eastern Rohan is invaded, and the Ents defeat the invaders. Also, the orcs of Dol Guldur strike the elves of Lothlorien in the first Battle of Lorien. The second battle happens on the 15th. There is also the Battle Under the Trees, where Thranduil fights off the forces of Dol Guldur on the same day. Denethor burns, Faramir is saved after he was hit with a poisoned dart days before. Many are healed in the Houses of Healing by the future king. March 16th through the 20th. On the 16th, the commanders of the Host of the West hold their last debate before riding off for the Black Gate. They make it to the Morgul Vale on the 19th, destroying the bridge to Minas Morgul behind them. Frodo and Sam look out over the vast camps of the orcs of Mordor, taking up disguises as they were overtaken by orcs. Meanwhile, in the north, the Battle of Dale commences between the dwarves and their allies, the Men of Dale, against the Easterlings. Frodo's lost items are brought from the Tower of Cirith Ungol to Barad-dûr. March 21st through the 25th. While the Host of the West continued to the Black Gate, orcs and Easterlings attempted and failed an ambush. During this time, Éowyn and Faramir continued to heal in the Houses of Healing, and the third Battle of Lothlorien would take place in the north. Aragorn would allow some of his fearful men to leave, and to retake other outposts, while the rest of them made the final journey to the Black Gate, fighting the Battle of the Morannon on the 25th, while Frodo, Sam, and Gollum came up the slopes of Mount Doom, and after Gollum took back the ring, it would finally be destroyed through fate. March 25th is an important day, one we call Tolkien Reading Day, to celebrate our favorite story. On March 27th and 28th, the Easterlings would be driven out of the north after nearly having victory over the dwarves and Men of Dale, and the destruction of Dol Guldur would begin. April 3019. On April 6th, Celeborn and Thranduil met to divide up the elven lands of the north, with Dol Guldur gone. On the 8th, while the hobbits rested, the Host of the West celebrated the Ring-Bearer on the fields of Cormallen in Gondor. May 3019, Aragorn is crowned as King Elisar on the 1st, and Arwen's wedding party spends this month traveling from the north to the south. June 3019 of the Third Age. On June 25th, King Elisar finds the new sapling of the White Tree on Mount Mindolluin, and it is planted after the funeral for the old tree. Right before midsummer and mid-year, Arwen's company arrives in Minas Tirith, and finally on Mid-Year's Day, Aragorn and Arwen are wed. July through October 3019 of the Third Age. The return journey of the Fellowship and its final breaking occurs during these months, along with the funeral of Theoden, the wedding of Faramir and Arwen. Gimli and Legolas explore the glittering caves and the Fangorn together, while a few of the eldest beings in Middle-earth have some last words together as well. The hobbits return to the Shire by November 1st after learning how dire things have become in Bree on their way back home. November 3019. After their arrest at Frogmorton, and witnessing how Saruman's evil has tainted the Shire, the four hobbits rouse the Shire on the 2nd, and fight the Battle of Bywater on the 3rd. Saruman is also slain by Grima, and Grima by hobbit arrows, ending the Scouring of the Shire and the War of the Ring both. Finally, September 3021 of the Third Age. After years of rebuilding the Shire, acting as mayor for a time, and leading the hobbits in the restoration efforts, Frodo's wounds had shown themselves to be permanent. On the 21st of September, Frodo and Sam set out for the western harbors, meeting with the Keepers of the Rings on the 22nd, Bilbo's 131st birthday. On the 29th of the month, they boarded the elven ship and carried the final elven rings over the sea, ending the Third Age of Middle-earth, and leaving the Red Book of Westmarch, the tales of their adventures, and so much more in the hands of Samwise Gamgee, who remained behind for now. And that is our complete timeline of The Lord of the Rings. From this timeline, we see how many important events may happen over a great deal of years or in a matter of days or hours. We must attend to them all. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed this. If you did, please be sure to hit that like button and share this with a friend to help out the video. Let me know your thoughts about this and what other timelines you would like to see in the comments below. If you'd like a less specific but overall timeline for the history of Middle-earth at large, I made one a few years ago, so I'll put it in the cards. I hope this helped you on your journey to explore Lord of the Rings. If you'd like to support the channel, please consider getting some candles from our friends Mythologie Candles, or order some Whatever United Cutlery Lord of the Rings swords, statues, and other replicas from Castle Kon, who does international shipping, and use the code WEST at checkout. And please check out our merch. Join our memberships and Patreon for access to our Discord and our monthly podcast. Thanks to our Valar tier patrons and YouTube members: Ed Patterson, ComicNut64, Brian Hunley, Peter Shepard, John Hume, Reese Jenkins, Arthur Merlin, Theodore Zumi, Todesmorgen, and Joby Weasel. Thank you all so much. Please subscribe to join the Men of the West, and I'll see you all again next time. My friends, thank you all so much for joining me on this adventure. Until the next one.